Time for Dart Talk. Brought to you by thedartzone.com. Stay in the zone. Thedartzone.com is an official Cosmo distributor and Windy City Fabricators, America's premier fabricators of orthotics and prosthetics. And Redwood Darts, America's newest tungsten darts. Stand straight and tall and hit them all. Redwood Darts. And now, here are your hosts, Mystery Mark and Steve P.
Dart Talk carries the Internet Broadcast Rating TVD, a broadcast that is specifically designed to be viewed or heard by the darting community, and therefore may be incomprehensible to other lesser mammals. Darter discretion advised.
Okay, welcome to Dart Talk.
Welcome. How are you?
Whatever day it is. Hi, how you doing?
It's May 8th.
May
Wednesday.
8th. May the 8th.
May the 8th.
2013. Welcome to Dart Talk. Steve Prounce-Hellman, Mystery Mark, and Chat Room Girl is here. So you
Yes,
guys
she
go
is.
ahead, log in, and bug her, because she's been bugging us. Brought to you by the
That's her
Dart
job.
Zone.
Stay in the zone.
TheDartZone.com is an official Cosmo distributor. Also, many thanks to Windy City Fabricators and Redwood Darts.
Absolutely.
This is going to be a difficult show, but we'll try to get through it.
What would make that any different than all the other shows? They're all
Yeah,
difficult.
Well, no. Well, because, rumor has it that I tend to be critical.
Okay.
And I don't know where
There's
these
not that
rumors
there's
get
anything
started.
wrong with that.
Well, yeah, we try to be constructive.
Yeah.
And we try to
Nobody's perfect.
foster things. Well, here's some of the criticism I'm getting lately.
All right.
I'm getting like, hey, dude, you're not promoting the sport.
That's completely false.
Well, yeah. I mean, just because I don't promote it the way some other people promote it doesn't mean I'm not promoting it.
Correct.
But I don't consider myself a promoter. This is not the Barnum and Bailey, hey, come get your dart show, right? This is not a show where you just get to come on and say whatever you want and we nod our head like a
Right.
little dog in the window and say, oh, well, that's great. Thanks for coming
Yeah.
on, and here's your door prize. We don't really do that. And I don't
Because
see
we
the
can't
value.
afford the door prize.
Well, that's true. I don't see the value of that anyway.
I
I don't see
agree.
the value. Everybody's been complaining my entire life. Like, if you watch some show like Meet the Press,
Mhm.
right, they'll get like two people on with opposing viewpoints.
Of course.
This guy will say his viewpoint. The other guy will say his viewpoint. And there won't be any follow-up questions. And they'll move on to the next issue and nothing ever gets resolved. I mean, hasn't that ever annoyed you? You know,
Well, I mean, sometimes,
not that...
there's not. You can't always resolve things.
No,
so
we
it's good to
cannot
have,
solve all the problems of the world.
Right.
I don't know what to do about Syria, right? I cannot solve that. I cannot solve the problems of the Middle East, but I can solve
sure.
some of the problems we have with darts in America and darts in North America and stuff like that. I mean, that is fixable, right? As far as some of these other things, you throw up your hands.
Well, yeah.
But I'm not the first
But
guy
we're
that
not
couldn't
Meet the
solve.
Press either.
Yeah, well, I'm not. They have staff.
Yes.
It must be nice to have staff. I mean, nobody's been able to solve the Middle East problems in 2,000 years. So the fact that I can't do it, I don't think anyone should hold that against
Right.
me.
I don't think so either.
But the knock
nobody's
somehow
asking you
that
to do it either.
well, no, but the knock somehow that because we're critical of certain things, somehow we're not promoting the sport, I think is short-sighted
ridiculous.
and wrong.
Yeah. I agree.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's like
we're all about promoting
Yeah.
the sport of darts.
we're
I mean,
trying to
that's
make
what we're-
things as best as they can
Right.
possibly be given the kind of resources that we have to work with, which are limited, right? We don't have corporate sponsorship in the millions of dollars like some other sports have.
Correct.
Right? We don't have a fan base like NASCAR or the NFL.
But they all just start from somewhere.
Well, yeah.
And eventually you could get there.
I mean,
Even
professional golfers were considered, basically a bunch of lazy, good-for-nothing, gambling rejects.
Yeah, country club.
Well, no, I mean, they were
Rejects.
below that. I mean,
Well,
it was
right,
like the
just
country
before-
club
right.
people were like, those
Yeah,
were the
you're right,
golfers,
you're right.
and if you were
Yeah.
a pro golfer, then you were somehow less than everything else, where pro tournaments had less stature than amateur tournaments until, like, I don't know, Bobby Jones.
Right.
That's what, 1930s, 1920s? Pro football, I tried to explain this to the love of my life the other day. I mean, the pro football used to be unwatchable. It used to be considered inferior to college football. College football was king until Red Grange and, graduated, and they started touring and saying, hey, these college guys that you used to like to watch, you can still watch them now.
Right.
Right?
Yeah.
And they ended up giving you a better game, right? Darts is kind of the same way. You've got basically what we have in America up until the beginning of last year is you had basically a collection of amateur tournaments.
Okay.
That's all you had. You had a collection of amateur tournaments and an organization that was modeled after the amateur organization that they had in England, where they had some amateur tournaments but a completely different structure, where they had like organized uniform leagues all reporting to the same governing body, and that governing body also was putting on tournaments.
All right, I follow you.
Okay?
Yeah.
Unfortunately, in England, all the pros and the really top players said, you know what, we can do better than this, and they started the PDC, which was basically, for lack of a better way of putting it, a pro tour, where they got all the best players, and if you want to see the best players play any sport, doesn't matter, darts, bowling,
right.
tennis, cricket, the cricket that they play in India,
Yes,
goes on
I know.
for 3 days,
Yes.
Soccer. I mean, anybody who's a fan of a sport wants to see the best players play.
I agree with that.
What is so attractive about seeing somebody that isn't that good at something do it? Where you're saying to yourself, well, I could do better than this. I mean, like we have the Cubs in Chicago.
Well,
it's amateur baseball.
Pretty much.
Right?
It's AAA.
I mean,
that's the
not
reason
even
why.
AAA, but sometimes.
Yeah.
But I mean,
it's the same thing. That's why, just from that fact, AAA, people don't go to see AAA baseball except for because it's $1 hot dog day on Thursdays, and they live in Kane County, Well,
and this was one of the first things that I noted for this week's show is our darters all Cub fans, right? Because I was talking to my brother about they want to remodel Wrigley Field and stuff, and I don't know, try to get more money out of the place, right? And I'm trying to
just continually bang their head against a brick wall and.
People, and this was something that Chat Room Girl brought up about how she goes to this tournament, it's poorly run, all these things go wrong, yet she had a good time anyway.
Okay.
That's a Cub fan.
Yeah,
they go they go to the ball game. They watch these guys find a new way to lose every day. I went to 2 games last week, back to back for the first time in my life, froze to death both days, and just watched them find a new way to lose.
Did they lose both? Or
yeah.
I thought they won the first one.
No, they
lost both.
Yeah, it was awesome. I'm not going to like go on this litany about why the Cubs stink. But what I'm saying is, you've got these darters that go to tournaments like Cub fans, where despite the fact that the Cubs stink, you go to the ballpark, have a good time.
Yes.
They want to move them to like the suburbs. People aren't going to go there.
No way.
Right? You're going to lose the entire atmosphere. And this is something I said on the show a couple of months ago, how I don't want to lose the coffee house atmosphere that we have with all these amateur tournaments, which can be a lot of fun. You meet all these great people. I mean, that's great. But when it comes to advancing the sport, the amateur tournaments, that's it. That's what they are. They're never going to be more than what they are. If you want to get out with your friends and have a good time and throw darts, there you go.
Right.
There you are.
But you'll increase the amateur aspect of it if you increase the pro aspect of it.
Well,
people are going to want to just go out and throw darts then.
Yeah, you need to have somewhere to go. You need to have something to aspire to. You need to have some sort of progression that's available for the people that want to participate and get better and get better and aspire to something and be inspired.
Can move on, all this stuff.
Like any other sport.
Right.
I mean, little kids go to baseball games to see the big guys play.
And then they want to go out and play baseball.
Right.
Some of them can only be in high school. Some can play college. Some can.
Right, but they appreciate, the more you play it, the more you appreciate it, and the more you get out of watching the pros to the point where you can be critical and be like, that guy stinks.
Right.
I'm in the chat room, for
well,
this
and people
Darts
take
Live.
that the wrong
and,
way, though.
People
you say
need to
that
get
guy stinks,
educated.
but he stinks at the level he's playing at. That doesn't mean
Well,
he actually stinks.
yeah, he's failing to play up to the level of a professional, and therefore he stinks.
Yes.
Like, did you see the goal this guy gave up?
Yes.
Okay. Obviously,
He
knew, and he was the first guy to admit, I stunk.
Even the announcers said that was a.
But I go in this chat room, right, and I'm criticizing some player, and then some guy who obviously doesn't know who I am is like, oh well, but he's there, as if somehow, because you're in Hong Kong playing, you're above criticism when you're silly enough to go for the 19s to start a cricket game. Like, honestly. That guy needs to listen to the show more often and probably, like, kind of listen to it over and over and over again. Because we have a rich show. You should listen to it more than once. But
I like that point, though. Why would that guy be above criticism? Major League Baseball, Major League Football, or NFL football players, they're all criticized all the time.
You talk about Monday morning quarterbacking.
Yes,
I mean,
everybody's criticizing everybody.
Right. And darts cannot be an exception. If you're going to treat darts like a sport, then everything is fair game.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I read some hatchet job article today on Vijay Singh, who, for people that don't know it, Vijay Singh's like a 50-year-old golfer. He's been in the Hall of Fame. He's won majors, highly respected for his play, but has been having injury problems the last few years and discovered deer antler spray, right? Well, apparently, that's against the rules of the anti-doping agency.
Right.
So there was some sort of like suspension. They held some of his prize money in escrow, and then the doping organization looked at the deer antler spray, took it off the list. So then the PGA rescinded all their punishment. Okay, so it should be over, right?
You would think.
Well, Vijay Singh is now suing the PGA Tour.
Oh, I did not hear that.
Well, this is new, and it was announced today. And one of the guys who is a shill for the PGA Tour is now ripping on this guy, saying, well, okay, this is like the showcase PGA Tour championship this weekend, and you're going to sue them now and la-di-da-di-da. I'm like, okay, it's a hatchet job, but it's fair criticism, and he's fair game. You can criticize him, too. Everything's fair game.
Exactly.
You back up what you say with whatever facts you have. Now, I've got issues with the ADO on a philosophical level. I have issues with the way darts is being governed in America. I have philosophical issues. So I reached out to a bunch of ADO people, and I said, look, this is the question I have for you. If you want to come on the show, great. If you want to submit something in writing, great. You can have your say, but I would like to discuss this. And so, a couple of people are, they're nice enough. They're interested. They're committed to darts. And they're like, okay, well, we don't have time to come on the show, but we'll be happy to respond.
Right.
What's the issue? And I'm like, well, the first issue is, do we need the ADO? Do we, at this day and age, where we are today and where everybody, I assume, wants darts to be in 5 years, do we need the ADO? Are they more trouble than they're worth?
People take that as, do we need the ADO as a governing body, or do we need a governing body at all?
Well, that's what the ADO is. The ADO is a governing body to the extent that they govern.
If you take away the ADO, do you mean you don't want a governing body? Or?
Well, and that was my next question. If you take away the ADO, what do you replace it with? Do you replace it with one organization? Do you replace it with two organizations? Do you replace it with three organizations? I mean, what is the deal? So I want to get into that in this show in some detail. We got some quotes from some ADO people that we can quote them accurately, but I have serious issues with what they say, and I think it really points to one of the problems with the people that you have in the ADO. So we're going to take our first break. We'll be back. You guys feel free to post stuff in the chat room, and we have Chat Room Girl here so she can break in, and we'll try to deal with the issues in real time. You're listening to Dart Talk with Mark, Steve, Chat Room Girl, and we'll be right back. Okay, we are back for the second quarter, brought to you by the Dart Zone.
Stay in the zone.
TheDartZone.com is an official Cosmo distributor. Sorry about the flicker. It started right before we started the show. I have no idea what's going on.
We tried to fix it. We couldn't do it.
It's a new Ustream feature.
Yeah.
Kind of like, the free credit report guacamole
Welcome
slider
to the
or something.
strobe.
Yeah, welcome to the strobe show. I thought we fixed it. I guess we didn't. Just bear with us, and we'll try to fix it for next week. Hopefully the audio will be okay. Now, I am not going to...
Can we do something first?
Oh, yeah.
Please?
Why don't we run the disclaimer?
Before we continue this?
Yeah, let's disclaim everything. All right.
The views and opinions expressed by guests on Dart Talk do not necessarily reflect the thoughts or opinions of the hosts, our sponsors, any official Dart sanctioning organization, and post hoc ergo propter hoc, any and all spelunkers, debunkers, raconteurs, roustabouts, technocrats, hepcats, cat ladies, Lady Gaga, the Four Seasons, the Three Stooges, the Academy of Motion Picture Arts and Sciences, hipsters, kibitzers, hellions, the fickle finger of fate, or Tom Waits.
Okay, so
All right, nicely done.
we're all disclaimed.
Yes.
And let me just add one thing that I don't know if I really said it the way I wanted to say earlier in the show. It's like we and me, by we I mean me, very early on, like almost 2 years ago, we have 2 years doing this show in June. I'll have 2 years.
You will
doing
have
this
2
show.
years. Right.
And I decided a long time ago, and I had conversations with people where I was like, look, I am not a professional journalist, okay, but that doesn't mean that we just sort of take everything at face value from whatever anybody says and then parrot it out like everything is great. If everything is great, then nothing is great.
Yeah,
you know
that
what
makes
I mean?
sense. Sure.
So it's like if people have good ideas, like we haven't gotten into this webcam darts. Right, we talked about it.
Yes.
You went to look at the software because I wanted you, who's not as computer savvy as you're kind of a normal computer guy. You know your way around a keyboard.
But that's it.
But that's it. You've never done any programming.
Right.
And I was like, well, see if you can get this working on your own without any help. Let's see how difficult it is for the average person. Right? If you have to be a computer programmer to do it,
it's not
then
for everybody.
they need to make it easier.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? It's not hard to get a webcam now, and you could borrow this one,
Right.
and take it home, and maybe by next week, we'll see what happens.
Well, that's why I stopped because.
Well, yeah.
When you go, you start, you go with equipment, and then I don't have all the equipment, so I was like, well, all right, I'm not going to continue this at this moment.
It's going to take a little time to set this thing up, but you only have to do it once. And once you do it once, and it's set up, the way you want it, and you can maneuver your way around the board and figure out how to enter your scores and stuff, then you can actually start playing.
Right.
And that's when you really determine the value of something. Is like, how playable is it, right? They're doing this online darts on a lot of the soft tip boards. I can think of at least 3. I know that the Arachnid G3 does it.
How do they
Sheltie
know, though, that
does
you're
it, the
actually throwing
Radical.
from the correct distance? Or that your board height is correct?
Well, the soft tip is all based on the manufacturer. As far as like the people at home, nobody knows.
Yeah, the video darts.
No, nobody else
online
knows.
darts.
There's no way. You're on. It's the honor system.
Okay, yeah. It's like golf.
Yeah, it's like golf, except people can't call in and say, hey, he was kneeling on a towel. Give him
Right.
a 2-shot penalty. Anyway, so I just wanted to say that, I know that I'm critical, but I try to be fair and I try to be constructive, and I'm not out to just, take pot shots at people, because I have an axe to grind.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? I mean, people take criticism personally, and to the extent that they do, I'm always regretful because I don't mean any of the criticism that comes from me to be personal. I understand people take it personal, but I don't mean it personal.
Well, that happens with everything.
Well,
though.
yeah.
I mean,
well,
somebody
okay.
calls for a coach to be fired. They're not doing it personally. They're doing it because they're reporting.
Well, no, some of them do.
Well,
I mean,
some
some
do.
people, I hate that guy and I want to get rid of him.
Right.
Like, I hate the Miami Heat, but I don't know any of those guys personally. Right? I just hate the way that team was constructed, and I hate their attitude, and I want them to lose.
You're not calling for them to, disenfranchise.
I don't think I could successfully argue that.
Probably
if
not.
I could, I might
give it
try.
a shot.
Well, I mean, should the Cubs be in a AAA affiliate?
Well, they are.
I mean, I don't know. I mean, they're like Houston. They're having bad year after bad year
They're
after
a
bad
AAA
year.
affiliate for Major League Baseball.
Speaking of bad year after bad year after bad year. Okay, so here's the deal with the ADO now. I have issues with the ADO Basically, because I don't see them as functioning well, and I don't see them as providing any value to players.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Now, as somebody who goes to a lot of tournaments, I end
They
up.
don't. They have to have some value.
Well,
You're saying they have no value? They have to have some value.
I'm saying that actually, not only do they not have any value, but they're actually a detriment to the sport. The way they're currently constructed and the way they currently go about doing their business, they're a detriment to the sport. So instead of promoting it, they act. What's the opposite of promotion?
Demotion.
Okay, well, you
It
can't
doesn't really work
demote
that-
a sport,
yeah, no,
but
right.
whatever the opposite of promoting a sport is, I feel that that's what the ADO basically does. Yeah, stalemate's not really really what they're doing. And I think changes need to be made. And we've been talking about making changes for a long time. I actually joined the ADO as like a regional person
Right.
like a year and a half ago, thinking that I would be able to, from the inside, affect some
Make some
change,
changes.
make some
Right.
things better. And after a year and a half, I'm throwing up my hands like there's just no way. There's no way to work with these people. There's no way to get them to see the error of their ways. And then you start wondering,
why is
is
that,
it?
though?
Well, why is that? Why is it that you cannot, get people to
That
see
they're all
things?
set in their ways.
Well, and what ways are they set in, right? So there's a couple of things. So when you're talking about, so let's just, for the sake of argument, all right, here's the question: is do we need the ADO as players? And we got a response from somebody in the ADO. What was it on my phone? Where is it?
It was
Because
on-
I want
It's
to
on
quote him.
Facebook.
Let's quote this accurately. And
Yeah.
can you want me to read this?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. This is from somebody who is on the ADO board.
Right.
I don't think we need to really
No.
say his name. But he says the ADO exists.
He wants to rename it honestly.
Well, I don't know if he does or not, but the ADO exists to promote the sport of darts in the United States, and I can state categorically that there is not one member of the ADO board who is not committed to that mission.
You don't
That's
agree with
statement
that?
number one. Well, I don't see any evidence of it whatsoever.
Right.
You could say whatever you want. You could say, yeah, we want to promote darts. But the fact is that if you undercut efforts to grow the sport, if you undercut efforts to increase the playability and the opportunities for your own players, then you're not promoting the sport.
Correct.
So I take issue with this. And this has to do now there's like this long thing. If you talk to anybody in the ADO about the PDC, there are hard set feelings of anti-PDC among people who support the BDO. As an American player, I don't really care. Whether you have it in for the PDC or in for the BDO, I don't really care. As an American player, it's like, how does this affect American darts?
Okay.
Because those are two organizations in Britain,
Right.
right? You have one that is these guys are fighting with each other, and what they've done in England is basically made you choose whether you want to play the BDO or the PDC, right?
Yeah.
And you cannot do both, okay? That's fine. It's
like
in
before
England.
the
what
NFL
do I care?
merger.
What do
You
I
didn't
care?
play-
As an American, if the PDC is running 35 tournaments a year and the BDO is running 4, and I want to be a player, which one would I play in?
Well, I would assume you'd play the PDC.
Well, yeah.
Unless you could only
Obviously.
get out 4 times a
Now,
year.
if one has prize money of millions of dollars and the other has prize money of hundreds of thousands of dollars, which one would I play?
To millions of dollars.
Right.
Of course.
If I'm in to become a champion and if I want to play the best players, which one would I play?
The one where the best players are.
Right. So I do not see any argument for being involved in BDO events at the exclusion of PDC events.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I don't see any problem with playing one week and one the next week. I don't see any problem with that. It's a dart tournament. I got 3 darts
You
and an
could
entry
go.
fee.
Right.
I'm in.
Yeah.
Right? Unfortunately, it doesn't work that way in England. But
They
that's
won't-
in
they
England.
won't allow you
They
to
also
enter.
have a queen. We don't have a queen
Right.
here.
We do
right?
not.
I mean, this is America.
Last time I checked.
It's America, and it's 2013. So I think some people need to get their clocks fixed.
Mm-hmm.
So as far as like the American Dart Organization goes, I don't see any reason why they should be associated with one international organization at the expense of another. That's number
Right.
1. Now, for 2, and we did a show about this, a couple of months ago, where it's pretty obvious now that the BDO is discriminating actively against American dart players. And I think we proved that.
Yes, I think we did too.
And it's proven in their own documentation,
Mm-hmm.
right? They won't come on the show. They know it's true. Everybody knows it's true. To the extent now where the BDO is saying, well, you guys that played in this tournament in January in Vegas and got your points to qualify for the BDO championship, we're not going to count your points if you played for the PDC, these PDC associated events in America, even though if you played in a PDC associated event in Scandinavia, that's okay.
But they worked it out with the Scandinavian whatever
How did they work
organization.
It out? Well, how did they work it out? They basically said, you guys are an exception and you can play them both, but the people in America are not, and they can't. How is that? How do you back that? How do you square that? Okay? The American
I don't know
Dart
how Scandinavia worked it out.
Look, the American Dart Organization is supposed to be representing American darters, right? So if they're not going to do that, do we need them?
No, I would think
Now,
no.
the discussion I got in with one of these ADO people were basically like, well, if you want to play internationally, you have to go through the ADO. And I'm thinking, well, not if you're gone and you're replaced. We don't have to go through you. Right? Because if the ADO is going to be the go-to organization of American darts and they do it so ineffectively and they do it in such a haphazard, blatant, discriminatory manner, I don't see why we should use them.
If you go back to that and say, okay, but if you want to play internationally, now take the amount of people that are in the organization and take the percentage of those people that can actually go play internationally.
Okay.
It's not that there's not that many, right?
Well, it depends. I mean, it depends on you can go right now, you can hop on a plane and go play in a BDO sanctioned event in Europe.
Right.
You could just go show up and play.
But what I'm saying is if you want the ADO in order to play internationally, but the amount of players aren't that there's not going to be that many that can afford it, that are good enough and that want to go overseas. So but you're talking about an organization of all dart players. You're not necessarily worried about playing internationally, are you? You're more worried about playing in America first. Let's get it
again.
solidified.
You're talking about a progression. Okay, if there are big tournaments to play overseas, why not play them?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, that's all we're talking about. The ADO should be concerned with American dart players and protecting American dart players from discrimination. That should be like one of their first things in their mission.
Exactly.
I mean, according to this guy, it exists to promote the sport of darts. So if you're going to be in cahoots with discriminatory organizations, how are you promoting the sport of darts? If you're eliminating the ability of players to play in tournaments, how are you promoting the sport of darts?
Oh, I agree with that.
So on its face, this is a bunch of BS. Right. So if this is going to be what the ADO says of themselves, then you don't need an organization like that. I don't see how you need them. I really don't. Now there are way more issues than just
getting rid of them.
Pick on this one sentence, but this is what they say.
Yeah,
and it's like, well, I don't see it. I don't see how you're promoting anything. The idea somehow that they came up with this weird WDF thing, where now they supposedly have some rhetorical cover, where it's like, oh well, this is a WDF decision. This isn't our decision. Is I find that like ridiculously transparent. When the WDF is like in cahoots with the BDO and, well, we're going to enforce any BDO bans that the BDO wants, but we're not BDO, is like nobody believes you.
Right.
Okay. So now you have somebody who's arguing about if you want to play international darts, you have to go through the ADO. And I'm thinking, well, what would be better is if we just got a real organization that was, listening and reporting to the dart players, we'd be in much better shape. What you have with the ADO, you don't have direct election, right? You don't get to vote on who's on
the board.
It's the ADO board members that vote on the ADO board members. So you got
and then
nothing
they make
there.
all the decisions.
And if you ask them, they'll tell you they don't even know who the dart players are.
Well, that seems
according
odd.
to the ADO, they're like, well, we don't even know who our members are. Mm-hmm. If you don't know who your members are, how do you represent them?
Right.
And if you don't know who your members are, all you're representing is yourselves. Right?
As an organization.
So, as an organization, you're by definition dysfunctional and useless to a guy like me, who's just a dart player who wants to play darts. Right? Now,
without any restriction.
Yeah, Sassy has some comment over there. I can't make heads or tails out of it. I mean, I can read it, but it's grammatically awkward. What is AMOA? It says here, don't leave out the AMOA, NDA, and U.S. soft tip in general, who have spent the last 20 years convincing North Americans that darts is simply not worth doing. I don't know what that means. Okay, I'll take a whack at what it means. Is the ADO is so dysfunctional that they've driven people to soft tip is what I get out of that.
Okay.
Where, well, here's the difference. Well, yeah. There's a big difference though between something like the NDA and the ADO, because the NDA is a commercial capitalistic enterprise who has any capitalistic enterprise has very clear-cut goals that are very easy to see. Any soft tip manufacturer giving a tournament is out to make themselves money, and in so doing, get the dart players playing. And to the extent that the dart players buy into it, then that works. And that's totally fine. They're not out. Nobody. I'm not going to mention any specific manufacturers. They're not out saying, we're promoting the sport of darts. They're in a business.
Yeah.
They're selling dartboards.
Right.
And they're trying to get people to put quarters in their machines. And
However
to the extent that they're
they
successful,
yeah.
that's how they define success. And they're doing exactly what they say they're going to do. Okay?
Right.
When you say you're promoting the sport of darts and then you work against promoting the sport of darts, then you're frauds. So we don't really need you.
Right.
Now,
but then,
again, see now, and this is where, people are going to take this personal. It's like, you don't take this personal. This is just, you look at what people do. And then you look at what they say, and if they don't match, they're hypocrites, right? By definition.
Well, I mean, I don't see it. They don't have to take it personal. Not everybody has to agree with you, but that doesn't mean it has to be a personal attack on them. It's just that, if they disagree with what you're saying, that's fine.
And here's quote number 2 that we can quote from the ADO person here. There will always be issues within any organization, and we do try and find resolutions to these issues. Unfortunately, it's not always possible to implement the resolutions we want.
So they find resolutions, but they don't implement them.
Okay, so
I've got a way to fix your problem,
so this
but
is
I'm not going to do it.
Look, we know there's a problem, but we can't fix it.
Right.
Okay,
but
why don't we get an organization that can? Is what I'm saying.
How to fix it.
Why don't we get an organization that can? Why don't we get an organization that says, you know what, we want to promote the sport of darts, and here's how we're going to do it.
Right.
Here's our plan.
Yes.
Right? I looked on the ADO website for a mission. I couldn't find one. I looked on the BDO's website for a mission, and it was a bunch of gobbledygook that was obviously a lie, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, we dispensed with them 3 months ago. The ADO doesn't even bother. They don't have a mission. Their mission, apparently, is just to stay alive. And to be honest, I'm not sure with the ADO that they need to stay. I've already come to my conclusion.
How would it not be possible to implement the resolutions they want? Is that because they're in bed with the BDO?
I think part of it is that their allegiances have led them to a place where they're cornered, right? And without breaking their allegiances, they cannot grow the sport in America. I think that when it comes to the BDO, I think that's the problem.
Okay.
I also think that you've got people, and again, I'm going to make enemies with this statement, but it's 2013.
Why stop now?
Yeah. The year is 2013, okay?
Last time I checked,
now,
yes.
We've had Supreme Court justices and we've had senators that were, in their 90s, still adjudicating cases when they were awake, still showing up for votes in Congress, and every now and then would say something so ridiculous you realize that they don't live in the same century. Okay? If you have an organization where the people are living in the past, or they're not living in the right century, and they don't understand what's around today, technology-wise and all this wise, then, they shouldn't be running an organization.
Yeah.
You see what I'm saying? Now, here's the thing that I didn't say on the show a couple of weeks ago that I meant to. It was like, you have to understand that an organization like the ADO, these people are, well, for the most part, unpaid volunteers.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. However, just because you're an unpaid volunteer doesn't mean that you're the person that should be in that position. So let's, for the sake of argument, say, if you had some consultants management consultants come in to fix the ADO, the first thing that they would make everyone do is apply for their own job, right? And
Okay.
how many people in the ADO would get the job that they currently hold if they had to apply for it?
I'm guessing 0.
I can think of maybe 2.
Okay.
I can think of maybe 2. Not to single anybody out. I'm just
No.
saying, look, it's like part of the reason that you have an organization that doesn't function well is you don't have the right people in place.
Right.
Okay? And this is just the way it is. You've got people that have been there for 20 or 30 years, which, they deserve credit for everything that they've done. But at the same time, you know what I was doing 20 years ago? You know what I was doing 30 years ago? Because I wasn't doing this.
The show or
Yeah.
darts in general or
Either.
anything. Right.
I mean, it's who cares what I was doing 25 years
Exactly.
ago?
Doesn't
who
matter.
cares what I was doing 30
Well, it matters
years
what
ago?
you're doing now.
I got people talking about what they did in the 80s, and I'm happy for you, but the past doesn't exist.
Mm-hmm.
The past only exists in artifact and in your own mind. All you have is the present, and you try to build toward the future. The past is over.
Right.
Learn from the past. Learn from your mistakes. Try not to repeat them again. But so what if something happened in 1985?
Doesn't matter.
Who cares?
Right.
These people that won tournaments in the 80s, I think, great. Fantastic. But so
Doesn't
what?
matter now.
So,
Yeah.
did that help you win the blind draw last week?
Well, no, but even the fact is, times have changed anyway. So just
yeah.
whether players, you can argue players are better then or better now. It doesn't matter. The fact is what's going on right now.
Right. So the only way to fix a structure like this is because I kind of have a plan. I think I know how to fix the ADO. So let's take a break. We'll catch up and see if anybody said anything worthwhile in the chat or that I can understand in the chat. And then we'll be right back for the second half. You're listening to Dart Talk with Mark, Steve, and Chatroom Girl. We'll be right back. righty, back for the second half, brought to you by the Dart Zone.
Stay in the zone.
TheDartZone.com is an official Cosmo distributor. Also, many thanks, Windy City Fabricators and Redwood Darts. So everybody in the chat room agrees with me. That's kind of frightening.
It's a shock.
Well,
Yeah.
I think everybody, is going to agree with me. When we get down to my solutions to the ADO, I think a lot of people are going to think that it makes sense. But I don't want to give short shrift to what was said here.
Yeah.
So let me start out with this other quote. Yeah. Let me get back to number 2 here, and just table that. We'll get back to that. I pretty much know where that's coming from. The idea here, and again, do we need the ADO? This is part of the response that was sent by an ADO member or a board member, and it says it must be said that the vast majority of darters, not just American players either, do not need a governing body. Now, again, that's kind of true and not true. I mean, you need to have rules. I mean, you need to have some sort of like standards, as far as like your play and stuff. But you can do that stuff locally, and you don't really need an overarching governing body to tell you how to run your league, which is what the BDO does in England. I mean, they have BDO leagues, and all the leagues are the same.
Have to follow the same
We
rules.
don't have that in America. It's so decentralized with all the individual leagues that they just pretty much whatever. If you ask anybody what their league format is, it's always different than somebody else's. I mean, I don't know how many variations,
but when you
there's
go into
probably
any
hundreds.
league, you could look at what the format is, and you can choose to play in it or choose not to.
Well, yeah. I mean, it's just a league.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like leagues are mostly exist for recreational players in my mind,
Right.
and to the extent that people have a good time, the leagues are successful, right? And anyway, so what he's saying here is don't need a governing body. This obviously applies to recreational players as well as those who are just interested in going out one night a week to play league or a local blind draw. However, those who want more from the sport do need a way to do so, and national and world governing bodies provide this. I won't take issue with that.
Disagree with that.
Yeah, I think, when it comes to having organizations, for international competition, you need them. I don't know that we need the ones we have.
No,
but that's why I'm saying, I mean, do we need to replace it, and what do we need to replace it with, right?
They're not saying just once you get rid of the ADO, everything's being fine.
And here's
you
something.
need a governing body.
Right. And here's the quote that just makes me shake my head and wonder, how the world came to be. In the U.S., the ADO is the only realistic way to qualify for international competition, such as the World Championship and the World Cup. Okay. This is about as silly and self-serving a statement as I can imagine. The only realistic way to qualify, well, we just need to create a new national organization and get rid of the ADO, or just, say, what, the ADO doesn't represent the players we do. Right? The only claim that the ADO has is that they do business with the WDF, which basically is only a way for the BDO to glorify themselves as being the dart people of England, which is why darts is not in the Olympics. Let me tell you something. The reason darts is not in the Olympics is because of the WDF and because of the BDO. Because the lengths that they made to try to show everybody that they were running darts when they didn't have the support of the players and the stars is why there's not darts in the Olympics. Because anybody with half a brain will look at this organization, look at the PDC, and say, these guys do not have their ducks in a row. These guys are obviously not organized enough to call themselves a sport. And that's
all right.
That is, in my mind, why you can't have darts in the Olympics. If you had darts in the Olympics, how would you pick a team? You're going to have the ADO pick a team?
Right.
They don't even know who ADO members are. They don't even know who their own members are. Right? And then what about soft tippers? And what about, people who live in America but have Canadian passports? I mean, I don't trust them to work this stuff out.
Right.
I can't even trust them to, get anything right. Right? Because they're not honest with themselves. The only realistic way is the ADO. Well, what if we replace the ADO?
Right.
There's
another
what
way.
If we
There's
replace
always
the
another
WDF?
way.
I guarantee you somebody tomorrow could start an international dart organization better than the WDF and say, basically, if you are involved with our organization and you want to play, here's how you play. And we don't care if you're the BDO or the PDC. You'll get plenty of countries being, I'm in. I'm in. Everybody's tired of this BDO, PDC nonsense. The PDC won this war 10 years ago, and the BDO is still fighting it, right? Let's just get rid of them.
Right.
Let's just get rid of the whole thing and say, you know what? We'll start a new organization that is anybody who wants to play can play. You just got to prove that you live in your country.
Yeah.
Right? And here, you want to be on the Belgian national team?
Go ahead.
Show up Saturday at noon and play, and top 4 guys are on the team.
Yeah.
Right? What's wrong with that? Open competition.
Sounds
how
pretty
you
simple.
That's how you get things going. You
Right.
get rid of the politics. Right?
And
You don't enhance them.
If you can't
You don't
show up,
increase them.
if you can't show up and you can't play, so be it. But that's just like every other tournament.
It's like, them having this ADO regional the same weekend that they're playing the
Exactly.
biggest tournament of the year in Vegas, and the guy's like, well, none of these guys would show up.
Yeah.
If that's what you think, you have no business running any organization at all.
Right.
You need to. This is like the backyard open that you won.
Yeah.
The
mystery
well, I
mark
assume you
backyard
won.
open. Well, I think I did.
I
don't know. I got beat by myself.
What was the
playing.
format? What was the
I
format?
lost playing lefty.
Okay,
to myself.
and this goes on. While there are certainly financial rewards, although not on the same scale as the PDC, meaning like far, far less, and this is a good point, the main incentive to compete in these events are anything but financial. And this goes to, I think, the heart of why people want to support the ADO despite their dysfunction, is that, the idea of going to a World Cup, even if it isn't a World Cup, but what they call a World Cup, because, the way they define the world, they leave out really good players.
Everything's
but
a national tournament, too.
No, but the idea of representing your country and being on the U.S. national team and going to an international competition, I mean, how can you not?
Yeah.
How can you not support that?
Right.
Right. I mean, I'm all for that.
I agree.
And I had a talk with a couple of people because this ADO thing's been kind of building with me for a long time, and I'm kind of like, well, we should have a national team. I don't know how you're picking it, but we should have a national team, and everybody should be eligible to compete for it, right? Now, the way they do it, you could kind of argue whether or not they do it the right way or anything, but whatever. Let's have a national team. But now you're going to go to events that are organized by organizations that discriminate against Americans and discriminate against pro players, and you can't support that. To the extent that you support that, you're complicit, and now it's like, what have you done? It's not an international competition anymore. Now it's an international club. Why don't you just be the Elks? Play the International Elks Championship. I am the Elks champion. I have won the Elks event. I mean, you're diminishing your own. You diminish your own events, and 2013. So what you do is you diminish the importance of your own event.
Yeah.
And then you try to promote that event as being something. Nobody in their right mind is going to believe you, right? So how do you promote an event that you've already undermined?
Well,
right?
I don't think
I won the backyard
open. They
open,
believe they're undermining it.
Well, I mean, it's pretty obvious they have. So, I mean, somebody needs to say it. I guess it has to be us, right?
There you go.
So anyway, there's some financial rewards. Any individual who believes in the concept of true sport, not just a way to make money, will possess a desire for personal excellence and a willingness to pit their skills against quality competitors from around the world. I agree with that. But if the quality competitors are on the PDC and they can't play, then you've just killed your own argument.
Exactly.
So now you need to go sit in a corner and think about what you've done.
Right.
Right? And that's what the ADO doesn't do. Nobody makes them sit in a corner and think about what they've done. Right? It's the most self-serving garbage I've ever seen.
They can only play against quality competitors from
that they determine
in certain areas of
in
the
certain
world.
areas. Like I mean, it's just insane.
Yeah.
And I don't know any other organization that actually does this sort of thing. Look at the Masters. They got a 12-year-old Chinese kid playing in the Masters because he won some event in China.
Asian /
They didn't say, well, Chinamen don't count.
Yeah.
Come on in. Come and play.
Right.
That is the spirit of competition.
He won a qualifier.
Yeah. He won his qualifier, so he's in.
You're in.
Right now, in America, we've had to go through all sorts of discrimination over the last 150 years, 200 years, whatever it is. And we've managed to conquer it slowly. Okay, but in America, the one thing Americans don't do is you don't discriminate against talent, Okay,
Right.
if you're the best player, you get to show up, and if the best player ain't there, the event doesn't count. So you're running these international events where you're banning the best players. What kind of event are you calling? What is this? It's the same with the soft tip. Well, yeah, we're going to have a world championship, but these guys can't play.
Yeah.
Well, it's not a world championship then, and you're full of it. And you need to get called on it, and all the players need to yell at these people. And they need to say, this is garbage. We want either it's the best players or it's a club tournament.
Right.
And then call it a club
It's not
tournament.
a world championship.
Hey, it's this is our club, and you're in our club, and
Yeah.
call it what it is.
Yeah.
Okay, I won my club tournament. We got the NDA results.
Which is good.
That's a club. That's a league tournament.
It's like
Congrats
winning the club
to the winners.
championship that you at every golf course you play at.
Congrats to the winners who
Yeah.
won whatever they won, and they
Right.
won a club tournament.
Right.
And that's all it was. And they still, you should get credit for winning.
Mm-hmm.
But, again, what is it? A sport does need a governing body both nationally and worldwide. Okay, does a sport need a worldwide governing body? Nah, I don't know. I guess if you want to have international competition, you do.
Yeah.
But the worldwide governing body that we have now, I think, is totally dysfunctional and useless.
Well, football doesn't have a worldwide governing body.
Yeah, and they do just
They
fine.
have a national football league.
Well, does Major League Baseball have a? Is there? Well, no, wait. Well, football doesn't.
Right.
But FIFA is the international governing body of soccer. The FIBA is the international governing body of basketball.
Right.
The World Baseball Classic, which how do you schedule these things when the pros are playing?
But those don't have to do with the.
That is
our
a
major
governed. That is
sports.
no. I mean, we're participating.
Yeah.
Like the Olympics are run by FIBA,
Mm-hmm.
right? And that's why you got the trapezoid lane and all this. You can goaltend,
Yes.
and whatever rules they
Right.
come up with that we just are
Well,
like.
they
"What,
play
are you
with the
kidding me?"
international rules.
Well, that's
Yeah.
somebody deciding that the rules of the sport that were invented by the Americans. We don't really like those
Exactly.
rules.
It's
We
like
want to do
Canadian
our own.
football.
Canadian football. I mean, whatever. I mean, you got to have some rules to play by,
Mm-hmm.
right? It's funny because you talk about Canadian football, and the first thing I thought of is soft tip, where you've redesigned a board to make it easier to hit stuff,
Right.
right?
Yeah. Just
let's face
make
it.
the field wider and the fact that you can.
It's a
Run
much
off the
different.
line.
It's a much different game.
Yes, it is.
And, there are American football players that probably would not thrive in Canada, and there are, like, plenty of Canadian stars that came to America and couldn't make the team.
Right.
So, I mean, it's a different game. I'm not dissing anybody. All the soft tippers in the chat room, leave me alone. Okay, and then the final point, it's not as simple as finding a replacement body. The World Darts Federation would have something to say about that. The World Dart Federation basically needs to go too, is kind of what I'm thinking.
they're
To the extent that the ADO and the WDF are basically cooked up by like three people. It's like Ollie Croft and Buddy Bartoletta and some other guy. Like, hey, let's just create this organization. We'll get all these other countries to sign on, and we'll fob ourselves off as the masters of all darts.
The ADO
and you
and
managed to fail to get darts in the Olympics in England,
the ADO and
where
the WF.
everybody plays darts. You couldn't get darts in the Olympics in England. You failed, and you need to go. Right there, the WDF needs to go.
But the ADO and the WDF are partners, right?
Yes.
So
They're
obviously,
associated.
well, yeah. So when he's protecting the ADO, of course he's going to say, well, the WDF would have to say something about it.
That's why they both have to go.
Yeah.
And to be honest with you, there are way other issues with the ADO, just beside the general philosophical issues that we're talking about here, right? It's like, how do they spend the money? We talked about how they're getting like maybe $100,000 a year when all is said and done in sanctioning fees, and what do they do with that $100,000? Who knows?
Right.
Do we see financials? Is there any direct accountability to the players by what the ADO does? No. The ADO just basically, they're off on their own doing whatever they want, and so's the WDF. That's why they need to go.
And they have the ability to tell you that you can play or not play in this tournament.
Which is like, and
How does that
players
make
have the
sense?
ability to say, you know what, how about nobody plays in your event, and you guys, as board members, can go play.
Right.
How about you guys just go play, and all the players will go play somewhere else? How would that work for you? Right? Because instead of leading, you're just a guy taking a walk.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Isn't that the joke? You know, if
yeah,
you say you're a leader and nobody's behind you, then you're just a guy
yes.
taking a walk.
Right.
I think the WDF and the ADO to a large
They're
extent
just
are
out on a
taking a
stroll.
walk. Well, yeah, I mean, look at all the positive advancements and opportunities for dart players in America in the last 18 months or in the last 2 years, however you want to do the cutoff. And you tell me, has the ADO been involved in any of them? And I will say no. And I will say to the extent that they've undercut them, they need to be held accountable for that as well.
Right.
Right? I don't want to start a war. I'm just saying, look, what do we do about the ADO? And I do have a solution. I have this all figured out.
Do you think you're in the general consensus with this, or do you think there's more people that are going to be on the ADO WDF side?
Everybody has been silently complaining about the ADO for years, that the ADO is out of touch and the ADO doesn't do anything, and the ADO is not capable of doing anything.
This isn't all just your theory. You talk to a lot of people.
I've talked to people for years about this, but I've never really sat down and said, how do we fix this? So I have a solution.
All right.
So I have a solution. So we'll take one more break. We'll come back with the solution. You're listening to Dart Talk. Who with Chat Girl? Chat Girl, Mark
today?
and Steve.
Who's here? I'm not sure.
Who's here? All right, so we'll be back. It'll just take a minute. We'll catch up in the chat. We'll be right back. Okay, and we are back for the fourth quarter, brought to you by the Dart Zone.
Stay in the zone.
TheDartZone.com is an official Cosmo distributor. I hope he'll still sponsor the show after this.
He
one.
might, you never know.
I don't know.
We'll find. We'll check your voicemail after the show's over.
You know, we've had great sponsorship insofar as, you know, he basically, you know, the Dart Zone has never told us what to say, what not to say. He understands it's
Well,
like,
that's not
you know,
necessarily true. They've told you to at least say their name a couple times.
Oh,
a
yeah.
show.
But I mean, he doesn't edit the show for content.
No,
and
I
none
know,
of our
I know.
sponsors have ever said, well, look, you can't say this and you can't say that. And that's one of the reasons that, you know, we can talk freely on this show. And I will walk into the bullshooter, and if they want to throw me out for the things I said, they can throw me out.
Right.
But I stand by what I say. I show up at tournaments, and everything I say, it's not like I haven't said it to the president of the BDO or BDO board members, or ask anybody in Chicago who's on the board of the local
Right.
dart league.
Oh, they've all
Like
heard it.
Yeah,
Sure.
it's not like I haven't said, look, you know, you're going to die, and here's why, and now the league is dead, and it's like, well, I told you so, right? So anyway, I do have solutions to this, but what's your, you know, I've been going on and on. What's your take on all this stuff?
Well, I think we've talked about this enough, and I think that some of the things that people might misconstrue is the fact that you're not just saying get rid of the ADO. You're saying that it needs change. If it's get rid of the ADO and get a new governing body in there with a different set of concepts or whatever, or there's always a model to go by. Like
paradigm.
There's an organization that you can model it after or something like that. We were talking about the ATP.
ATP, the Association of Tennis Professionals.
Right. And the model they have of where they have the board of directors and their assistants.
Okay. Now, here's the thing with the ADO, and, you know, again, like I say, history doesn't exist, but it is useful to see how things evolve.
Yes.
If you're curious how things get so messed up, sometimes it's good to see where they made their wrong turns.
But and everything makes changes too. I mean, the ATP they weren't successful all the time. They always have down. You know, you have down years and you make changes.
It evolved.
And you do anything you can to make it better.
It evolved, but you know, successful organizations are organizations that evolve over time.
Right.
They recognize that things are different now, and then they adjust
They
accordingly.
adjust accordingly, right? Exactly.
The fact that you've got an organization that is by and large intractable and modeled after an organization that is about as bad a model to model the ADO after the BDO.
That's what I take out of this. That's what we're trying to get at. I think.
It was a mismatch from the word go, just because, you know, America isn't Britain. We're so much larger geographically, and you know, if you look at, you know, I'm not going to get all American political, but there are huge cultural differences by region in America.
Sure.
You have large population centers, and then you have like these massive rural areas, right? Who does the ADO really represent? I mean, for the most part,
they don't know.
Well, yeah. If they actually had a list, though, the large majority of players in the ADO would be on the East Coast.
Yeah, right.
Right? The biggest dart league, the biggest steel tip dart league is in Boston, right? Well, okay. That doesn't really help you if you live in Salinas, Kansas.
Not at all.
Or Coeur d'Alene, Idaho, or you know, Jackson Hole or something.
Nebraska,
I mean, you know, that's pretty different than Boston.
Yeah.
Right? And you have a whole different set of problems to deal with. And, you know, the ADO doesn't address any of this stuff, right? So now we've had organizations that have tried, and I'm thinking mostly more recently of Major League Darts, where they've tried to start something new, and I don't know how successful they were or not. I don't, you know. Depends how you define success. Depends how they define success. But the idea that you can start something on your own and
Depends
be
on
successful.
How we define success.
Well, look, I mean,
no, I'm just kidding.
If you look at the NWDS and what they've been able to accomplish in less than a year, I think, you know, they've far exceeded anything that the ADO's been able to do in the last 10 years.
I'm sure they exceeded their expectations too. But
I don't know. Maybe they haven't.
Maybe they haven't.
I don't know what their expectations were. And I don't know how successful the ADO was in the 70s or the 80s.
Right.
And I don't really care.
Doesn't matter.
What I care now is, like, does it work and is it fixable? Right. I'm to the point now where I'm not sure it's worth fixing in its current form, because the people that are involved in it don't seem to feel that they're doing anything wrong.
That's what I'm getting at. Either you fix it and you model it after something other than the BDO, or you have to
Well, you
Just-
don't model it after the BDO.
No,
Look, I mean, there's no
something other than the BDO,
Well, look,
or
I
you
mean-
just dismantle it completely and put it in an organization with a completely different set of values.
Yeah, I don't think you can dismantle it. I think what we need to do is just start a nationwide organization for dart players, right? And I think that modeling it after the ATP would be okay. Now there are things in place right now, like you've got the NWDS and you've got the North American Championship Tour, where you have a coherent series of events, and you have outside sponsorship money, which is what you need.
Sure.
Right? My biggest beef especially with like soft tip events, for the most part, not counting Darts Live and not counting anything like, I don't know anything about Phoenix, but aside from the new ones that have come up, my attitude of soft tip has always been from a tournament standpoint, where steel tip tournaments, you're basically playing for your entry fees. In soft tip tournaments, you're playing for your entry fees and some of your quarters, but the payout is way less than it should be. That's always been my beef with soft tip tournament play, right? Where it's like, steel tip, okay, you're playing for 90% of your entry fee, 90% of everybody's entry fees, right?
Yeah.
Soft tip, I think it's way less than that.
Right.
I can't get numbers from anybody because
but
they
especially when you're
want to
adding
tell
quarters,
you what
right.
their profit margin is on events, right?
Yeah.
But I'm pretty sure it's awfully high. Now, when the ADO starts running events where they're paying out less than 50% on a singles event, that's another reason that they have to go.
I agree with that.
Okay. So what do you replace it with? What the ADO does do that's probably worth keeping is, if all the ADO did was they contracted to the point where all they did was run their regionals, where they have their 4 tournaments a year, they have their 4 nationals, right? Which, again, they'll mess this up. They won't do it correctly. But if all you did was have the ADO contract to the point where they just concentrated on these 4 tournaments and running these regionals, I think that they might start getting healthier. The problem with the ADO, though, is that the current people that run it have too many institutional problems to overcome. That's why I'm like thinking it's not really fixable.
Why do Why do these people want to run the ADO when they have no interest in who the players are? There has to be an underlying reason, right?
People do things for different reasons. I mean, I'm not going to speculate on why somebody wants to be on the ADO board, although I did hear one telling comment where I mentioned to somebody, maybe we should get rid of the ADO. And the guy was immediately like, well, what would happen to me? And I'm like, well, you'd still be you.
Yes.
I mean, if your self-identity is
only
tied to the
defining
ADO,
characteristic?
I don't know how you look yourself in the mirror to begin with.
That's it. That's your only
right?
defining characteristic.
How do you not hide your head in shame?
Yeah.
Right? Look at what you're doing. Look at what the ADO does. So, however, my solution for the ADO would be to contract to the point where all they do is run their 4 events.
Right.
Now, when it comes to the Utes, I think they need to kind of redesign that. And I've always been impressed with what the ADO does. I've always felt that they had a really good emphasis on youth darts. I don't think it should be cut off at 18, and I don't know if it should go to 25, but at least 21,
It's open
I'm
for
thinking.
discussion. Right.
But you now have these youth events that the PDC is running that you could send people to. Instead of, I don't know how much it costs to send these kids to play in the Winmaw Masters. Why don't you send them to play in this PDC Unicorn Challenge instead, and send them over there 3 times, or send them over there for 3 weeks or something, so they can really learn how to go overseas and play for a few weeks. And I wonder financially if it would even cost that much more than what they're already doing now to go play in an event that I'm not sure people could play in. Because I'll tell you something. Here's what's going to happen with the Winmaw Masters. People are going to show up, and they're going to say you can't play.
Right.
Oh, you're on the North American Championship Tour list, so you can't play in this event.
Thanks for coming.
but thanks for stopping by. And they're going to wait until somebody pays their way and goes over there. Right? This is another reason why, the WDF, BDO, ADO, they all have to go. They're all anti-player. Now, if the BDO ever amends their rules to fix all this stuff, I'll reconsider whether or not we need to get rid of the WDF, but for now, I see no option.
Yeah.
They've left everyone
Well,
no option.
I don't see the BDO amending their rules either.
Well,
you never know.
the only way that they would amend their rules is if everybody said, we've had enough of this.
Yeah,
and I don't
sure.
just mean like the ADO saying, you know what, we're not going to be involved in the WDF anymore. You're on your own. When you want to have a World Cup, not only are like the best players in the world not showing up, but we're not showing up either. And I talked to some of the people on the American team, and I said, you guys should back me on this. You guys should refuse to play in the next World Cup, which I believe is in Canada. And I guarantee you that if you do that, I will fight to make sure that when things are finally worked out, that you're the team that goes. If it takes 5 years to sort this out, when we finally do send an American team to a truly international event, you're the guys that are going, the people that earn their spots for this year. Because they're great people and they're great players, and they're between a rock and a hard place because they want to play.
Of course.
And that's
right.
that's the only reason the ADO has survived this long.
Because people want to play.
People want to play. They don't want to mess around with all this
Right.
stuff and all this politics and all this. They just want to play.
So how do we
and so
get
the
to
ADO
the
gets
solutions?
well, okay. Well, here's the solution. Solution number one is you contract the ADO and just get them to focus on running their 4 tournaments a year and running
And
their
the youth
regionals
events.
until they get that stuff sorted out, right? They're going to have to figure out something to do with overhead. They're going to have to reduce their staff and all that. They're not going to need like 18 people on the board. They could probably do it with 3 people.
Yeah, I was going to say 2
No,
or 3
seriously.
people. Right.
I mean, in this day and age, if you need 18 people to figure something like this out, you're dead anyway. If you have to fly people to a board meeting instead of like a video conference, you have no business running any organization at all.
Yeah.
Right? So that's
that's
job
that's
one.
where your 50% goes.
That's job one. Job two is the ADO withdraws from the WDF and has absolutely, what we do is we basically we have to create a new organization for American darters and then say, under no circumstances are we going to join the WDF until the WDF starts recognizing, the facts of the case, where they start saying, well, you know what, we're not going to do this. We're not going to be we're not going to be involved in your discrimination, right? And then they can send players to the, whatever the PDC has going or whatever start some other organization or whatever. I mean, I don't really care. I mean, it's one event a year. One event a year, the ADO sends a team somewhere. And half the time, the PDC guys are never there, but one of them is the America's Cup and one of them is just for North America. So you're only talking about one event every 2 years, and they can't get that right. Okay, so why even bother?
I agree with that.
I don't understand why you need an organization that's taking in hundreds of thousands of dollars in revenue to send one team somewhere every year.
Right.
Right? I don't really see that you need that. And it's the same problem we had in Chicago where, 20 years ago when you had 2,000 players, you needed a full-time staff, but you don't anymore.
Right.
So you as painful as painful as it is, you got to get rid of the staff.
It's
you
what happened in
start
every
automating
business around the country.
Yeah. Well, this should not be an exception.
Right.
And that's the thing with the soft tip. At least the soft tip organizations that are profit motivated don't run into these kinds of problems, right? Where you've got legacy problems and you've got a legacy organization and you've got people that literally are still faxing and sending stuff on paper and having people fill out forms. Whereas like the ADO is so bad that every time I go to an ADO event, I have to fill out another form with my name and address, even though it hasn't changed. What is
in years? Right.
Yeah, what is this? Honestly, I mean, it's like the 1950s,
Right.
right? I mean, it's silly.
They're still
that,
using typewriters.
Well, hey, I mean, it's like, and you're wondering, why you can't get financials out of these people. You're wondering why they don't answer to the players because the players don't elect them. So if you look at the structure of the ATP, which I thought was a very sensible structure, you have a board where there are 3 player reps that the players vote on.
Exactly.
There are 3 tournament reps that the tournaments all vote on. So, like, if you run a tournament in Cleveland or you run a tournament in Austin, Texas, or you run a tournament in Charlotte, tournament directors get together, which I've been telling them to get together since I started the show. Guys, get your own Facebook group together so at least you know what the dates are so you don't, like, step on each other's toes. Let the tournament directors nominate 3 people to be on the board. Now you got 3 players and you got 3 tournament directors. What else is there? Do you really need more people on the board?
No, I wouldn't think so.
Okay. So now you got 6 people that can make the decisions, but then the decisions are implemented by the staff. So now the ATP, I think, had 3 people. They got a president or an executive, and then they got 2 like operating officers and stuff like that. These are the people that coordinate stuff with the sponsors, that do infrastructure, that do rules, and all that other stuff that gets disseminated to everybody based on the input from the players and the tournament people. How would that not work? Because you don't have that now.
Right.
Right? And then you also have to have institutional controls where there's not no-bid contracts, where you don't have board members like with a business that the board throws business to. It's open bid.
Absolutely.
No more sweetheart deals. Because to be honest with you, I never understood how the ADO ran and assigned locations for their tournaments, and that should be transparent. All that stuff should be transparent. If you're not directly electing these people, then you have no say in anything they do, and you kind of deserve what you get.
How do you go about
so all the dart players are kind of
electing
like,
these people?
Well, you send out a ballot. So you actually have to have members. Like, I used to be an individual member of the ADO. The ADO had my address. They had addresses of lots of people, and they were always complaining, well, we don't get anybody's name. And, well, did you ask for it? When I go to a tournament and people pay their $2 sanctioning fee, did you ask them to fill out a form with their name and address?
And
No.
keep it?
And keep it? So
Right.
you have like a stack of like index cards as opposed to, I don't know, maybe put it in a database
Yeah,
or
maybe.
something? I mean, I don't know. Because there are ADO people at these tournaments just sitting around.
Right.
I mean, hey, why don't you get some names and addresses?
Type something in
Wouldn't
there.
be that hard.
Right.
Obviously, I don't have to do it because I'm telling them how to do it.
But
I don't
that's
have
a
to do
step,
it.
though. But they need a database of
But think
members
of
and then
right,
send out a ballot.
Right, but think of the organization that you're going to have here, where you're going to have tournament directors represented, you're going to have players represented, and then you're going to have like 3 people who actually implement it, right? You're going to have 3 people that are going to be in charge of the rule book and putting changes in the rule book, right? And these people are going to be elected. It isn't going to be like here's my beef with like NAPTA. Like, I don't know who these guys are, but I didn't elect them. And they're talking about I got some email from somebody with NAPTA, and the bottom line with that is like, well, yeah, we're doing this. And I'm like, well, who asked you? I didn't ask you.
Why are you doing it?
I mean, not that they wouldn't do a good job, but who elected them? Right? Now, the NWDS people, they've started their own business, so they're a commercial enterprise that should be basically, profit driven.
Right, yeah.
Right? Where it's just like soft tip. You're making a commercial decision. When you go to this tournament, this is the payout, this is what it's going to cost you. Is it worth it? Did they deliver? You're a customer. There are a lot. They've had 2 tournaments, and they had a lot of happy customers. So there's going to be people back.
Sure.
Right? Because they're doing what they said they were going to do. Right? What I don't think the ADO needs to do anymore is pretend that they're a sanctioning body. I think you could just eliminate all the sanctioning fees, and all the ADO rankings and all that stuff can just like go away tomorrow. Just delete it from the website and stop asking people for money.
Right.
Okay? Just get rid of it. And let if NAPDA's going to sanction this stuff, I say that the fee should be $1. Right? Either all the tournaments go in, or only like the North American Championship Tour. Only those count. Everything else, you're just on your own, just like soft tip. There's no reason to have ADO rankings that don't really reflect anything.
Right.
Right? The way their point structure is and everything, and all you do is show up and you get points, it's meaningless, and it just becomes silly. So why even, you can't use it for anything anyway.
Right.
I mean, I guarantee you, every year you look at the ADO points list, people are looking at whoever's like 10th or 9th or 6th, and they're laughing, and that guy couldn't beat me if I left him a match in my will. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
I mean, but, there are people getting out there, and, they get a lot of points, and it's like, okay, fine. You want to get out there and get a lot of points. There are plenty of people that don't think it's worth it.
Yeah.
Right? Like some guy from Arizona telling me, oh, I don't want to spend $600 to make $800. Which is what an Arizona guy has to do to go play a tournament in, I don't know,
New York
Cleveland
or something,
or Columbus or, whatever. You know what I mean? So when it comes to a ranking system, we can come up with that. And I think the North American Championship Tour, that one is fine. That's the only ranking system you really need. I don't think you need 7 or 8 ranking systems. I think one is fine.
Well, yeah,
Anybody
usually.
who's not playing in the North American Championship Tour events isn't going to be ranked in anything anyway. Right? Because they're the biggest tournaments of the year. If you're not playing in those, what are you playing that you're going to get ranked in anyway? Right? What's the point?
Yeah. No, I agree.
And if you want to just, okay, I'm just going to play like, my ADO regionals and all that stuff, what you're going to basically find is that that's not going to get you anywhere. You know what I mean? I mean, yeah, you want to go play your ADO regionals and all this stuff and be the ADO club champion and then maybe go to the Winmau Masters and play in an ice rink if you're not on the money list for the other thing. Go ahead.
Right.
That's fine.
When
it comes to international tournaments, I cannot say that the ADO should be representing American darters anymore. That's the conclusion I've come to.
Well, I think we agree with that. Yeah, I mean that's
unless and until they resolve all this BDO nonsense where they're basically the BDO's little puppy dog.
Mm-hmm.
Which as an American, didn't we kick the British out like 200 years ago? How'd they get back in?
Right.
I don't know. You know what I'm saying?
I do know what you're saying.
Until Americans start acting like Americans and being like, no, you know what? This is American darts, and you can take a flying leap at a rolling circular object. Then I don't think that they represent us very well. I don't think they ever have. The players that end up going overseas represent themselves well, but who's to say they wouldn't do much, much better if the ADO hadn't been on the ball for the last 15 or 20 years?
Right.
I mean, as far as our farm system goes. You know what I'm saying? So if the ADO just eliminates all sanctioning, right, where the tournaments just go on the way they were, but instead of giving the ADO money, they keep it and give it to the women, like I said a couple of weeks ago.
Yeah.
And then, after a year, if the women don't come, then give it to the men or give it to the kids.
Yeah.
Right?
Adjust.
Give it to the kids.
Try something.
Take all the sanctioning money and send a kid to England to go play in a PDC Unicorn Challenge thing.
Yeah.
Send him and his guardian. I mean, send him over there for 2 weeks so he can, or, maybe they do it where it's like the end of 1 month and then the next month it's at the beginning where you can actually kind of get 2 on one plane trip or something. Send them over there to play, and send the 20-year-olds. Get it up to 21. I think that's a better investment.
I agree with that completely.
Just let the ADO run their 4 things and get that right.
Right.
Okay, and then as far as the WDF, I think if we pull out of the ADO, then the ADO pulls out of the WDF. We get rid of it. We'll replace it with something better.
Mm-hmm.
I guarantee you, the PDC would love to replace the WDF. The PDC would be happy to run it. They have professional people that'll do it for $1. Be like, oh, you want a national organization to sanction this stuff? We'll do it. How about this?
For you.
We'll do it, and we'll put it on TV.
Yeah.
How's that? So instead of playing in some
It'll cost you $1.
Little hotel in Belize with scorpions in the shower, you know what? We'll do it somewhere nice like Macau or something, and we'll put it on TV. And we'll get everybody involved. I cannot imagine they wouldn't do it better than that. We need to stop supporting this stuff. And see, that's where I come down to. It's always on the players. Or if the players stop supporting this, it'll go away.
Sure.
Right? Unless the ADO's just going to send their own board members to the ice rink.
The
Let them
players
go.
need to support change.
The players need to support what's good for the players.
Right.
And that's what this show's always been about. We've always been, pro-player. And like organizations that, basically the players have no say in, I don't really support much.
Mm-hmm.
To the extent they do things well, I give them credit for doing it well. But what are they doing well? See what I'm saying?
I see what you're saying.
So anyway, that's kind of where I'm at with this. And I probably didn't articulate it as well as I had with my notes here and everything.
Well,
but
I think you got your point across.
Yeah. Why not? Let's make life easier for the ADO.
Right.
Let them just run their little regionals and stuff and run their 4 tournaments a year and get that right. And when they have a national 501 championship that pays $10,000 instead of, $500,
right,
then talk to me. Because now you're really doing something. Now you're doing something to help players, right? You're raising prize money. Go out and get some sponsors, right? Don't suck all the money out. Try to add some money.
Yes.
You know what I'm saying?
Grow.
Yeah, grow the sport. Promote the sport. This is what you say you want to do. Here's how you do it. Okay?
Advertising.
And then, come on the show and give us an update.
Yeah.
Let us know how it went and tell me, how great my ideas were in 18 months when if you do what I say, things will be so much better.
There you go.
right?
It's hard to argue.
Why don't we do Team Dart next week? Because I'm tired of talking.
Team Dart?
We had the NDA results.
Oh, yeah, we
she's
don't
like
have-
everybody. Nobody cares.
We don't
about
have
it.
time for that.
She's our soft hit person. She's like nobody cares.
I did not say nobody cares.
They're on the website. If you Google Team Dart 2013, you can find the results. What? It's true. They have a website and everything. It's hard to believe. I know, but here's what I.
Did he not?
Well, I will leave. Will you? Oh, chat girls chatting. But here's what everybody. If everybody, well, should have got a microphone. If everybody who's interested in what we're talking about, if you Google the Association of Tennis Professionals, and you look at their website, you'll get an idea of what I'm talking about. There's a link to their board structure and stuff, and I think if you look at it, you'll find a structure that you can really emulate. You got anything? Let's wrap this up.
I'm spent.
Are we good? Hopefully, we'll have a sponsor next week. Until then, Steve
The
Proncielman.
ADO is going to sponsor us. Next
Oh,
week.
yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
The New York Rangers or the Texas Rangers?
Yeah. See.
4-3.
Oh, okay. And who are they playing?
Yeah,
Who are the? No, they're playing. Who are the Rangers playing? The hockey's been great. I
I can't believe
Washington. Yeah.
I can't believe that Vancouver got swept.
I can.
That's unbelievable.
The Sedin twins.
Yeah.
Are you kidding me?
Well, swept. Whoop. See ya.
San Jose's good.
Yeah, they're all good.
Luongo, Corey Schneider. That coach is a mess. That guy they got running the Vancouver.
Yeah,
They should have
he's
got rid of
gone.
him 2-3
Yeah.
years ago.
He's gone.
Anyway, Steve Proncielman for Mystery Mark and Chat Room Girl. Thanks, everybody, for listening, and thanks for your patience with the flicker and everything. We will be back same time next week,
You
same
got it.
bat channel and
Yep.
everything. Until then, everybody take care, and you can always, we'll have the show up on YouTube. We'll have it up. You can follow us at Dart Talk on Twitter. TuneIn.com, Stitcher.com. We got a Facebook page, all that stuff.
Yep.
You can always email the show if you've got issues with what we said, darttalk@gmail.com. Until next week, thanks, everybody, for listening.
Thank you.
Safe travels to Blueberry and everywhere else you may be going, and we'll Dart Talk to you next week.